Welcome to the show and a happy new year. Happy 2025 to everyone out there in the paintball universe. I'm Matty Marshall, and I'm pretty stoked to have Ryan Greenspan, in many people's books, the absolute GOAT, the greatest of all time, still getting it done after all these years. And I wanted to touch base with him. And I've definitely talked to him a bit on his show. Check out the Spick and Span show Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time. But there's been a lot of turnover in the Dynasty camp, and I feel like some people are yet again, trying to write Dynasty off. And, the future is yet to be written, but just wanted to pick his brain on the new pickups and get his thoughts as we head into this new season just a couple months to go before we jump into event number one. We're going to keep bringing you guys a lot of interviews with the leading lights and some breakdowns of some events in the past and, kind of just getting that elite look at the tip of the spear here in pro paintball. So without any further ado, let's bring Ryan Greenspan from San Diego Dynasty into the mix. Ryan, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really well. Thanks, Matty. Just kicking off the new year, fresh with a revamped roster and just a nice little relaxation, I guess, on this crazy off season.
Yeah, it has been an absolutely wild off season. We've spoken about this on your show. You guys have been covering that. I was just on Marcelo and Tyler's show. Play the Game podcast. We talked about that for a little bit. We did a pretty long show and a pretty thorough break. Well, not this is the thing about the breakdowns. There's been so many moves that, we kind of talked about every single move with Todd Martinez in one of our last shows. Mm-hmm. We went for about an hour and a half, but even with an hour and a half, it just scratching the surface. So there's just a lot to talk about here. I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to kind of see behind the scenes here, Dynasty's mindset when looking at players. Cause playing for San Diego Dynasty is, Mike Bianca had said this, you guys picked him up as the coach and, guys have said this before. It's like when Dynasty calls, you got to pick up that phone. And even though, you guys don't have some, super rich owner that can just throw tons of money at dudes. So guys are playing for Dynasty, sometimes turning down money from other teams to play for the legends that are San Diego Dynasty, the most successful team ever. Now, now but so there's so many different questions, but, I just think that we're heading into a new era here with this much movement and this much change with all the rosters. So as far as the team mm-hmm. stories are concerned, I just think it's a departure from what we've seen in the past, 2020, and then there was getting to be a lot of parity and every offseason there's moves. But so before we kind of jump into these, a pretty thorough discussion of Dynasty's mindset, do you agree, disagree with that? Do you think we're heading into a new era, or do you think it's just kind of more of the same? What do you think?
Honestly, it's the same. Okay. I think that the only thing that kind of sparks like a new era in paintball is the success of Paintball Fit. But Bart spending a lot of money. Or the only other thing you could say is Randy not spending a lot. He went after some big name talent. But then after that, he ended up settling on the Blast Camp guys. The Blast Camp guys are good too. I talked to them at the end of the season when it was done. I was like, you guys had a lot of good sparks there. So, I'm interested to see how they'll play, but it's not the typical move for what Heat did. But Bart spending a ton of money, that's not new. Is this going to be a new era of paintball to see the same guys kind of winning? No, it's not. Everybody's stock portfolios went up so much that Damage and Bart and Impact were able just to throw some chump change out and get a bunch of guys to bolster their squad. And it's interesting to think too, because I was talking with somebody and they were mentioning the difference between a lot of these teams, where when there's a businessman owning the team versus competitors owning the team. And there's a big difference in the mindset because some of us, Dynasty, knows how to win. And that's where the value is, right? We can build success out of a lot or a little. And we've always been able to do that on a shoestring budget. Whereas the businessman mentality is like, okay, let's acquire this company. Let's acquire this talent. Let's acquire something to make ourselves better. When in reality, you're just kind of you're putting a Band-Aid on it because you're not getting long-term talent. You're not building a legacy. You're just kind of buying success for the moment. And so is anything going to change? No, I still think we're going to be successful. Will we win 4 out of 5 events again. I don't know. It's not probable. It's unlikely, but it's definitely a possibility. And I do want to go back and just kind of mention something that, which I love is it was your interview with Mike Bianca where he said that we were like, dude, let's see if he's available. Like he basically said it, and when I originally texted him, I was like, hey, yeah, you got a minute to chat? And like the very beginning, Mike's a great guy to talk to. He's a lot of fun to talk to. Long conversations, but it's like talking to you, kind of like very intellectual, high level, and can talk for days about just about anything.
Yeah.
But it was really funny because I said that. I was like, look, man, you kind of know where why I'm calling. And I just want to preface the whole thing with, we obviously hold you in really high regard, but you mentioned something one time that said if Dynasty calls, you got to answer. And so I kind of got him against the wall in the beginning, but yeah, I like, it's always good to have some change. Obviously I like winning consistently. But it's certainly good to have shakeups to see what else can unfold. I'd love to say this is a new era for paintball, but again, the whole paintball fit thing, it really does change a big dynamic because you got them spending very little. Now they practice a lot, so their paint budget must be astronomical, but compared to a team that's spending $500,000 a year, and there's success in both parties. So it's nice to see that.
Well, I kind of agree and disagree with you a bit. So I'd have to push back. Yes, it's going to be potentially look until somebody like I'm trying to make this as succinct as possible. I disagree slightly that it's not a new era because there's been so much change to the fundamental starting five of some of these top teams. And then the only two teams that haven't really seen too much of movement at all is Notorious and PB Fit. Still remains to be seen if they're going to pick up a divisional player here or there, someone from their area to kind of build their depth a little bit. But I just think the fact that we're, for the first time really in a long, long time and in generation, we've had a team like Fit come around and win the World Cup, thus proving that, you don't have to go out and hire superstars. It does help to own your own field and play every single weekend and be some badass dudes that want to get after it. That definitely helps, kind of required there. And then, so that happening, and then with the drastic shakeups that we've seen. But to your point, if I was to Steelman your case, it's like, okay, well, Legion picks up Urena, so they're still going to be really good. Impact's been a top level team, making, not too long ago, they won 2 events a couple years ago, but then, some finals appearances recently, but not able to, get that win past couple seasons. And then, but they have a huge shakeup. So it's kind of the way I'm looking at it as a new era is that the stories are going to be drastically different because you guys were the mainstays for so long, winning close to half the tournaments in the past 4.5 years. And then you guys have a big shakeup and you guys have to rebuild. And then Impact's undergoing a big rebuild. Houston Heat's going to be going through a big rebuild. So it's kind of like these institutional teams that we've seen very stable rosters for, a guy here or there, but not like 3-4 dudes leaving, or, stars jumping teams. So it's just, are the same names going to be winning? Impact definitely has a really good chance to win a bunch of tournaments this year. Damage looks really good, and they've been good recently. Fitz, anyone that's not picking Fit to do well this year needs to check your meds because, those dudes have just proved that, the gauntlet that they went through at World Cup, Jesus Christ. But yeah, I don't know. We could burn through our entire time having this argument/discussion, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's still paintball, and the good teams are still probably going to be pretty good. Let me ask you this though: as far as those top iconic teams, who do you think is going to struggle the most? Do you think is it going to be? On paper, because with Houston Heat losing Tyler Connor and Konstantin Fedorov, and Tyler's been on the team for multiple seasons now, and Connor Kelly wasn't there for too long. But Fedorov's been on that team for a decade, and those are 2 3 starters essentially. So they're anytime you're missing 3 dudes that are getting the lion's share of the playing time, that could drastically affect the outcome. What do you think?
Yeah, my gut says Heat would be the biggest team to struggle because the talent pool swap from one side to the other. Like losing Tyler and the guys that you mentioned, and then picking up the guys that they replaced him with isn't the biggest offset, right? There's a big disparity in on paper, but that actually sometimes can be beneficial because it's not like the paintball fit guys, or the blast camp guys don't know what they're doing. You know, they grabbed the 3 starters from that team, and you know what we've learned on Dynasty is players can flourish when they have good or better players, a supporting cast around them. So you can get a guy that was, you know, a mid level of the pack or lower mid of the pack, and you can put him onto a team with a good supporting cast, and as long as they can follow directions well. And I think that was one of the biggest things that affected Heat in the past is like it seemed like everybody's kind of like ad-libbing. You know, they're just like, well, Fedorov for sure. I mean, I don't know if he even looks at the game plans. But you know, there's just the structure was more the problem rather than the players. So I think that you kind of put guys onto that team and they could still do well. Now, if I'm looking at it from, you know, a very subjective viewpoint and I'm zoomed out, I'm going to say, yeah, that out of the teams that had a shakeup between us, and I mean, you did use the word rebuild with impact. I wouldn't really call it, albeit there are new guys. There's a big shakeup. A rebuild, in my opinion, is like you lost like all your good guys, and then you're kind of like have a couple dudes left, and then like you're just kind of like trying to rebuild. Like the Ironmen have been in a rebuilding for quite some time. I think they made some good pickups as well, though. Impact, I think, just kind of like bolstered their roster. You know,
well, I mean, you're right. I'm just throwing out
you say rebuild,
different ways to describe things. But that being said, I mean, if let's just say you have an engine that, you know, works pretty well, but you get some parts that are maybe a little bit more, I don't know, just different parts, and you have to take the engine apart and then rebuild it to put the new parts in. So, I mean, by its definition, since they are bringing on that many new bodies, I think you probably could too. Sure. But that's arguing semantics, whatever, dude, who cares? But the thing is that it's just tough though with the change. Before we move on to some dynasty questions, though, let me ask you this. So with Heat, it's going to be a little bit different there. You're getting younger guys with Soap, LaPapa, and Jackson that are coming in. And those dudes are definitely going to listen to the elder statesmen on that team. Because
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Blast Camp had not a bad look in mostly losses at World Cup. They went 1-3, but their plus minus was a -4. They had a close loss to Revo, a 1-point loss to you guys. They beat Tauntauns by a point and then lost to Uprising by 2. So pretty close on the numbers there for them. And I agree with you. You know, that is 3 essentially of their starters. Soap's real good. LaPapa had some real good looks this year. And I think that if they go there and train hard and listen to those dudes, are going to be able to play a lot with Ronnie. I mean, it could help them out right away. It's just that Heat was so consistent last year. I mean, they didn't win any tournaments and they had a hard time winning games on Sunday, but they were there every single time on Sunday, enough to be in the top 3 to get the bye at the end. Just a very kind of frustrating, still on paper, high level year for Houston Heat. But then when you look at, say, Impact, they're bringing in all these experienced stars. And so that's going to be a little bit more of the famous cliche of having too many cooks and chefs in the kitchen when you're trying to make the recipe. So that's something, but they know that though. But you've been on these teams before. I mean, you've been on teams with a lot of all-stars. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the cooks in the kitchen kind of thing is something that it's a term that a lot of people use. But who is going to be coaching them? Have they announced it? Is it still going to be Ryan?
Oh, Heat?
Yeah, Heat. Sorry.
You're talking about Houston Heat? I haven't heard anything other than Ryan Smith so far. So I think it's still going to be Ryan.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just kind of I was thinking about them for a second when you were mentioning that, and then that was one thing that I wanted to just kind of bring up is because he should be playing. In my opinion, he should be playing. No, but like the cooks in the kitchen thing, I think that is something that was relevant. Like I would say when guys are younger, but I believe that the guys that they have in that squad are all going to be. I think that they're mature enough to be able to handle that personally. that make sense?
Yeah,
You know,
I don't.
it's like it's one
Yeah,
of
it
those things.
does. I don't. Good.
No, it's just like when guys are kind of like early on in their career and they have something really to prove. But when you get a bunch of guys that are winning, it could go both ways, obviously. You know, I think there will be some how to play the field correctly discussions that don't always see eye to eye, but that's I think the biggest one is how to play the field, not kind of like I need to show off.
Yeah, those are two different parts of the conversation too, as far as going out there. And I'm not worried about those guys trying to be superstars just because they've actually played together enough times here in practice, and because they're all, a lot of them are Southern California guys. But I've also talked to most of those guys individually about this very specific mindset question, as far as having to work with each other and not tear each other's heads apart. I've talked to Marcelo about this. I talked to Tyler about this. I talked to Rainey about that. So they know that going in. They know that that can be an issue, and nipping that in the bud when it's starting to happen, because inevitably you're going to have disagreements in the heat of the moment, especially if things aren't going well at practice, or if you're getting your ass kicked at practice, and and you're like, wait, what is going on? Then all of a sudden that's when the tempers start to flare, and so being able to nip it in the bud while it's going on is totally different than acknowledging that could be an issue moving forward. But I mean, I am very excited to see them play. I don't know. Ultimately, with all this change, I just want to see where it shakes out. I do want to ask you, let's jump into the dynasty conversation, though. I want to get your thoughts on a couple more of these other teams. We'll save that until we have this dynasty conversation, because I want to be able to have like a thorough conversation on this, because, the fact that you could grow up one day and play for San Diego Dynasty is a pretty sweet thing about this, paintball universe that we live in. I talked to after you guys picked up Barrett and Kyle Berry, I talked to them, and they're just over the moon, man, super stoked, dream come true, and I've heard this time and time again of different guys that go on San Diego Dynasty, like, man, I had a Dynasty poster up on my wall when I was a kid, or, they were been whooping our ass for a couple years when I was, cutting my teeth in the pro ranks, and now I get to play for them and help the Dragon win. So as far as your mindset here, I mean, let's just kind of go back. When did you kind of know things were going in a way that where you'd have to actually start going after dudes? Like when did you find out about Sheer, Marcelo, SK? I mean, did you kind of see the writing on the wall ahead of time, or were you kind of blindsided after Cup?
Yeah, that was an interesting thing, because Marcelo had some personal issues going on, kind of beginning in that Chicago zone, and moving forward, and we all kind of thought it was like a personal thing. I don't know how soon or how early they had been planning on it. There have been talks and saying that people were discussing it at World Cup or before World Cup. Whenever you have a team, a player that's already kind of like has his foot out the door, it makes it really hard for them to kind of like really want or focus to win. Now, I can't say that about Chris or Marcelo, even though there were talks that they may have been talking to somebody beforehand, because both those guys played their asses off. So I don't know if they were planning win, lose, or draw to bail, or it was just kind of like, if things don't go right, let's, bail. I do believe that Chris's offer came kind of like from Joey and Damage, just kind of abruptly. I mean, Joey goes after one of our guys almost every single year, if not every other year. They try to get Kevin every time, and we just can't eventually compete against the cash that they have. So they're just kind of like offer him a deal that's too good to refuse. And so Chris was just basically like, hey, guys, I got some bad news, or I got this thing. Like, I don't know what I should do. They're going to offer me $60,000. Like, what should I do? I said, ask them for more. They've got it. Right. Kevin was the worst, because he just didn't text us or call anybody back for like 3 or 4 days in like when all this was going down. And we kind of had started to hear some little things here and there, because Mouse was talking to Kyle, and then apparently there was like a couple of guys going in there, and they're like Marcelo too. And Marcelo was just like, hey, look, guys, it's a money thing. I've got things going on, but personally, that like this type of money, and we've mentioned this. I think you can go back to every single interview we've had postseason when we've lost multiple bodies, and we're just like, look, it's all good. Like, thank you for being transparent. If we had the money, we would offer it to you, but we don't. We're never going to fault anybody for that. But it went Marcelo, then quickly Chris and Kevin. Archie was the funnier of them all, I guess, because Archie was like, I need to take some time, personal time. He was literally on a meeting with us because we had like an all hands meeting. Rusty was on there. We had let's call it a Wednesday. And we were all on there going like, okay, guys, like, don't worry about it. Like, we're going to be fine. Let's talk about bodies that we feel like we should pick up. This is after we lost Chris, Marcelo, and Kevin. And we already knew that we were losing Archie. Like, he had already told us like, hey, I'm going to retire. I'm retiring essentially because I wanted to focus on my personal life. So he just hadn't announced it yet. And so on that meeting, he's like, hey guys, I'm taking a step back. I just want to let you know I'm going to be here for the team. I think we should go after this guy, that guy, whatever. So that was kind of funny because it was like I think maybe a 3-day difference, 4 days between when he said he was going to be here for the team and not playing for anybody. And then like, was like, hey, by the way, I'm playing for them. But again, like, it makes sense for him. He can drive to practice. He can be in San Antonio and back before he's even like landed in California. He's got a wife. He's got a business. So again, no biggie. It's like, but the shakeup took 3 of our starters off the field. So, we need to figure out how to replace them.
So then what is Dynasty looking for? I mean, obviously this is a multifaceted question because, what you're looking for depends on who's left throughout the years. And, also what incarnation of the team are we talking about? Are we adding a puzzle piece of somebody we've been trying to get, but we're not trying to fill a hole. We're trying to add like a young killer that's going to push the older guys. So, I mean, but just in general, what is Dynasty looking for in a pickup for their roster? And then specifically heading into this, just real quick. So then heading specifically into these decisions that you're making.
Yeah. The biggest thing is we want to get a guy that wants to be here. And I think that we've always prided ourselves on having players on our team who want to be here. And we've said this a million times, like, and that's, I guess, the benefit from not having any money on your team is like the guys kind of have to want to be here. And that's also the downfall, I think, and a cause of some issues on those bigger budget teams is like they're playing because they're getting paid, a lot of them, not because they actually want to be there. But back to what we're looking for. So that's number one. We're looking for a guy that's wants to be here, someone that is, I guess, easy to get along with. Alex always jokes. We always kind of all joke, but like someone you don't mind sharing a room with. We don't want some jackass. And someone who isn't afraid to be opinionated, but isn't like hard-headed and like a yeah, but we don't want a yeah, but guy. That's like the biggest thing. You do not want somebody who's a yeah, but guy. Those are the worst. Honestly, the best guy, like one of the best teammates we've had is Mike Urena. When he came in, he was a yes sir guy. Even it didn't matter how many times we'd ask him, hey Mike, what do you see here? And he's like, I don't know. What do you see? I'm like, it's all good. Like, come on, what do you see? And the growth that he's had. I mean, I think we need a stipend for his paychecks now at this point. But he's been like the quintessential type of player that you want. You want someone who can, if it's a project player, you want someone who can grow, who understands and is not a yeah but guy. And Mikey, ticks all those boxes. And then that's why, like, when we landed with Kyle Berry, like Kyle Berry absolutely wanted to be here because we talked to him in the past. At one point in time, he's like, hey, look, I don't want to leave my team. I don't care who it's for. He's like, I have my own business. I'm not going to go play for that team or this team or that team. He goes, the only team I'll leave for is you guys. And I was like, oh, that's cool. We appreciate that. If it ever comes to it, well, your name is on a list. And so when this ended up happening, like Marcelo, Archie, Chris is kind of replaceable, but Marcelo and Archie are kind of like, they're tough to replace. Chris, we got tons of Chris's. The D1 guy. But
I don't know about that. That's pretty savage. That dude's pretty good.
Chris is great. But we need to get somebody versatile. That's another thing. If you kind of look at the guys on our team, we need versatility. And Matty, when we were I talked to you a million times this offseason about all these guys, and I'm like, well, what about this guy? I know we already talked about this guy, but did we talk about him some more? So we're looking for versatility. Versatility.
That's a fact.
Is the guy a good dude? Yeah, it is a fact. Is the guy a good dude? And can he get it done? So we ended up grabbing both guys, Kyle and Joe, who have a very similar skill set, really good in the scramble, have the wheels if we need them to kind of like, if one of our guys up front need a little bit of a relief. I mean, you take Archie. Like, Archie's not the fastest guy, but he was our number one in the snake for a couple of events. I mean, we got Arturo. Harry had an amazing event, and Danny hasn't even been able to like show his capabilities and really. So it's gonna be really nice, because we were talking about, do we want to add another number one guy, and we're like, nah, let's let these guys shine. Let's let our number one guy shine, and let's add more skill set in that scramble. And I think that's one of the things that you mentioned to me one time when we were on the call, is like, you got a couple guys that can play that scramble number 2 spot, but like, if one of us isn't playing well, who else are you going to put into that spot, right? And I think that was one of the biggest determining factors with Joe, and also Joe's desire and the fact that he reached out to get to talk to us. But Joe and Kyle are fantastic additions, I think, to the team, even though I haven't seen them play yet in Dynasty Jersey, because of their desire to want to be here, and how much they love paintball, and how badly they want to be on the field and like show up for the team. And that is such a huge factor. And this is something I think that you're going to get into here, Matty.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's just that desire and motivation is so crucial, especially when you've been doing this for so long. Because I mean, I was at Glenn Takamoto's birthday party. I can't remember who said it. Might have been Davey Williamson, and he's got a big boy job. He's got 3 daughters to support it, but it worked his way into this job over the years. And he doesn't mind his job because it pays him well, so he's sitting there and he's like, yeah, do I like, am I passionate about the sales job that I have? Absolutely not. But every 2 weeks when the money hits my account, I'm like, okay, I got to go back after it. And I'm motivated because I got 3 kids and I got a mortgage payment, and I got, that's his motivation, his children, his 3 daughters, and his being able to have a good life. But there's a certain thing with paintball is that, yeah, man, I mean, for a certain select and unique elite few, there is the blessing of having the money motivation there. And even throughout because it's not like you guys aren't paying dudes the salaries that the teams with more capital are, but you're still compensated in some way, shape, or form. So it's not like you're having to pay. But some dudes that are at the lower level of the game still have to pay. Whether it's for an airline flight here or I mean, and that's just the tiers. This is just, again, it is what it is, and this is the reality of the situation. And so you have to have that motivation. And when you are coming into a team that has a lot of pressure on it at all times, like San Diego Dynasty, you need to be ready for that mental war. And it's a different level when you're playing on an iconic team, whether you're getting compensated or not. Even if you're a boot rookie who's just getting free paintball, and you're a local guy and you come onto one of these teams, one of these top level teams, you still have to have that fire to go in the middle of the week and shoot pie plates, or shoot in your backyard, or do snap shooting drills, or show up on an off weekend and get some scrimmages in against whoever you can get. So when I talked to Joe and Kyle, they were just incredibly excited for the opportunity. And I mean, Kyle Berry was on a 10-day or 12-day road trip with his family to Utah, and he's like finding paintball fields to go get, to get some time behind the gun and get his, and making reels and stuff. And anyway, it was just impressive. And then Joe was super stoked too. But also I agree with you, because when we had discussed this behind the scenes, and I'm just looking at like where Harry is right now in his game, where Arturo is in his game, where Blake has been and currently can be in his game I'm talking about attackers right now. And then you're telling me, oh, Alex, he wants to get back out there. He's going to be training more. Danny really wants to step up, get more playing time this year. He's excited for the opportunity. I'm like, that's a lot of ones, man. That's a lot of first attackers that are versatile, that can play in different positions. And then you're losing Chris Shear, who, so who plays that? I mean, he was the go-to starter as long as he's been on the team on that D side. And he could play like when I was on, again on Marcelo's and Tyler's show 2 days ago, yesterday morning, whatever. Anyway, but it was, he was talking about Chris, because Chris was the type of guy that if you were stacking up the snake side and you're like, bro, you're on an island, don't die. Go to D2 and just don't die. But then as soon as it starts to go down, start making moves and close the game out. He can do that. But if you're like, all right, you're getting a partner, I need you to push this side, I need you to get up in that 50-yard line as quick as you possibly can, but do it safe, do it smart, and then start, chalking up kills. He could do that too. But I'm kind of looking at some of the other guys and I'm like, like there's a decent amount of dudes that can play that role. I was even, joking around with you when we were talking back and forth in the madness of the offseason. I'm like, Ryan, just hear me out, baby. Hear me out. Okay. So Ryan Greenspan playing the first attacker on the D side. Chris leaves to go to damage. Greenspan steps up, plays that number 1 role over there, wins the MVP, 42 years old, bro. What do you think? And you're like, LOL. Thanks for the vote of support, bro. But that could happen, bro. You could do that. So anyway, you guys got a lot of options there. But I look at your team, but you losing to Marcelo, and he was so crucial. Again, kind of irreplaceable. But this is why I'm fascinated to see the story play out. And this is the same on a lot of these teams. Is that okay? So Heat, perfect example. Who's going to step up and be that guy? Fedorov has carried them to wins. Moorhead's carried them to wins. Obviously, carried like had the big standout moment to get the MVP. Multiple dudes on that team have. Tyler, obviously tip of the spear, badass, elite all-star, helping carry the team in some points too. So now it's up to the Blast Camp guys. And I love this part of people's careers when you're starting to tear up and you get this big opportunity. So anytime you watch Houston Heat, all right, let's see what LaPapa can do in the snake. Is Soap going to continue to go off under this bigger scrutiny playing for one of these iconic squads? Is he going to still be a beast up that middle, or is he going to diversify his role, his skill set and his role? So when I look at Dynasty, I'm like, all right, well, you lose Archie, and he's first attacker in the snake, but there's just, that with Joe and Kyle Berry, I just think there's a lot of versatility there to potentially even be a first attacker, depending on the situation, not going to be necessarily the one in the snake, but to kind of play that 2 role. And then, because if you had to play the World Cup tomorrow, who goes into Marcelo's spot? Who starts for Marcelo? And then you guys have picked up 2 dudes that you can plug into that spot. But now we get to see, okay, Kyle Berry on the ML Kings, constantly the last player left alive, constantly having good looks and losses, constantly helping to be a leader, and try to pull dudes up with them. He was doing as much as he possibly could for that franchise. And then now he's heading on to San Diego Dynasty. So that's going to be really fascinating as a paintball story to see what he does. And then Barrett, gets released from Impact, even though he was one of their starters, or sorry, not Impact, but Infamous. And, he was one of their starters. He played the lion's share of the spins for Infamous last year. And then now he comes on to his dream team as well, too. And that dude loves paintball, man. He cut his teeth by, starting to play pro and then traveling to Asia, going down to South America, going over to Europe, playing 15, 20 tournaments a year. And it was impressive. And he got, exponentially better within a couple of seasons of traveling around the world. And when you go do that, you're forced to be an all-star. The guys, what game plan are we going with here, Joe? We need you to be the one. We need you to go shoot everybody. You got to shoot 3 dudes a point, and you have to do that time and time again. And they bring you back. It builds up that what's possible part of your mind. Like, oh, this is possible. I can go do this. And so it's just, I know, I agree. I like, it was kind of one of those things though. I wish you guys wanted to carry more bodies. Because if I was a rich owner and I owned Dynasty and we were paying dudes, we would have 10, so we just to have that extra body. But I just don't think if you get just even the same performance we've seen out of the majority of your first attackers, then I think you guys are going to be just fine. But because those guys are incredible. Artie's become elite. Harry was having some really good ones. You guys did really well at Cup until you ended up losing that last one, and Harrison got the majority of the spins as the first attacker. You guys went undefeated in the prelims. You beat Aftershock by 1. You beat Heat by 4 in the quarterfinals, and then you lost Impact by 2. Your plus minus was plus 16. That's pretty damn good, dude. So I just think that there's a lot of firepower in the one position on Dynasty. And then now with the pickups of more 2s and 3s, and then if Yosh is healthy, there's a lot of options there. And you get Mike, pick him up. Mike Bianca, I think is a huge thing for you guys. Let me get your thoughts on Mike too. Just because this is the specific question I want to ask you. So I feel that and we've talked about this throughout the years on different shows, but part of the magic of Dynasty is a slight bit of antagonism. The ability the willingness to be like, to defend your position. Here's what I think, and here's why I don't like what you're trying to tell me of how we're supposed to play this. And in that, Malmstrom comes out what's supposed to happen. It's this kind of energetic and very thorough and very intense line of questioning the strategy and the tactics. And out of that, even though it's very difficult to participate in because it can make everyone a little bit frustrated, but it's just that is kind of been one of the biggest parts of your guys' success. Obviously, at least of the components of of making of the strategy and trying to figure out what is the best practice. And then, so you've always kind of had these relatively strong-minded coaches. And so when I was thinking of like who could coach your team, I'm thinking, okay, well, it needs to be somebody that can intellectually, and that's not just a caretaker of your strategy. That's not just gonna be like, yeah, Ryan, that sounds like a great idea. All right, we're gonna do that. Okay, Alex, yeah, no, for sure, bud. Yeah, no, 100%. Let's do that. That's gonna challenge you guys a little bit, and I think Mike's gonna be able to do that.
No, I completely agree with what you're saying there, Matty. And what he's also bringing to the table is this, man. I think his real job, because he's a real adult, is he does like data analytics for large corporations, to show them when and where or what they're doing wrong or right. And that is such a huge aspect to what we have. I mean, Kevin definitely had really good data on more or less what the other team was doing. So Junior would collect the data and transcribe it all, and then Kevin would kind of just tell us. And you're kind of guessing on probabilities right there with what the other team's doing. Mike's already done so much with going through all of our games from 2024 and just saying, like, you guys shot a guy off the break this many times. You won this many points as a result. You lost this many points when you lose a body off the break. And we've already got these statistics, so we know, all right, we better shoot more guys off the break. And that's something that we're really good at in general. And, I think that like just having this analytic mindset, and then Junior also bringing to the table of being in the pits, giving us the real-time data, because that's something we did not ever have before. We would like end the game and then say, okay, this is what was happening. This is what the other guys were doing. This is what we were doing. This is what the team we're about to play is going to do. But if we lost World Cup as a result, what do we need the impact match for? So now we're going to have Junior in there watching that part, transcribing the breakdown. And so that way, when we come to meet in the pit, it's not one coach running, like Kevin would run over from the sidelines and be like, okay, this is kind of what happened. This is what you guys need to do. We're going to be able to have a meet in the middle kind of thing and get data from the whole set. And I think not only that, but then like having more structure in our practices. It would basically be like one of us kind of saying, let's do this. So I love
just
that
real
we
quick,
have that, and we'll see. Yeah.
Just real quick. I just want you to kind of flesh that out a little bit more. What does the Dynasty practice look like? And what do you want to see it evolve into in 2025?
It's tough these days when you schedule a 3 or 4 day practice against another team, because the other team has to have like-minded intent on what they want to have done on the practices. And what I mean is generally Dynasty gets to the layout weekend on a Wednesday evening, starts practice Thursday morning, just like a light day. Thursday where we're shooting lanes, we're doing breakout drills, we're snap shooting, checking off all the little angles in the shots so we can compile enough data and notes that we can put it into practice the next day when we start practicing a team. The problem is what ends up happening is whatever team we practice, Impact, X Factor, Aftermath, we end up just banging out as many points as we possibly can and then going to get lunch. And then the next day we bang out as many like 30 or 40 points. And then we go, all right, cool. And then we start refining game plans, but rarely do we do situationals. And hopefully we'll have some time to be able to set that up with the other teams. And I think that's a big factor. We're going to really focus on like not just the fundamentals, but just that teamwork, how to do this, like what to do in these scenarios on the non-layout weekend practices. I think we're going to be playing ourselves quite a bit more. And then getting some stand-in bodies to be our 10th body. But I think that's like a big factor is like we kind of got away from all this stuff. And when Kevin wasn't around, even when Kevin was there, it's not like he said, this is what we're going to work on today. He would just kind of say, these are the game plans, or try this, or do whatever, or go here. Here's the lines. But I think now I think Mike already knows what the team needs to work on. And it's just going to be important that we have somebody in a coach's position that wasn't like myself or Marcelo going, all right, guys, this is what we're going to do. Because now when you have, one of your peers is doing it, you're like, yeah. When Marcelo's like, all right, Ryan, we need to work on this. I'm like, yeah, all right. When I'm like, Marcelo, or I tell Marcelo, hey, we need to do this. He's like, so you just need someone that is the guy and say, just tell us what to do, like guide us. We know what we need to do, but we all need to be on the same page with it, because people lose focus really easily if there's no person of authority, a coach, i.e., giving the instructions on what we need to be doing. Next thing you know, you're trying to like look for these lanes, and someone over there, some Yahoo's shooting a bounce shot into you because they're bored.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, how much, because this is always such a big part of the paintball equation, is the discussion of how to run practices. And that's why I wanted you to kind of talk about Dynasty, but it's also different too, because I would talk to some, like I remember talking to Skinny. This was a couple of years ago, maybe 2023. It's kind of just doing typical homework stuff, like, hey, how you been? How's everything looking? Anyone hurt? How much you guys been playing? And I kind of threw that question at him, and he's like, dude, we're playing too much. I got some aging superstars out here. I can't have this dude, anyone could just randomly dive into a bunker and go out with a bum knee. I need to keep these dudes fresh. And so when you do have that kind of part of the conversation, I mean, obviously you're super active and you surf and you do hike, you do all these other different things, and you do play a lot of paintball, but how much is that part of it too? Because there might be some divisional teams out there that might have dudes that are a little bit older, but obviously need to be practicing hard enough in order to keep that, to either keep the sword sharp. But if you're in the divisionals and your goal is to be a semi-pro team or to go pro one day, you need to sharpen your sword constantly. What is your advice there? And how much do you think about that?
Yeah.
Let's not run us ragged.
No, you're absolutely right. One of the things that ails a lot of the divisional players, I feel like, is time on the field. How much time can you get on the field? Because a lot of us, I mean, for me and for Dynasty and for the top level pro teams, this is our job. So we budget a 4-day weekend for event layout practices, and then the weekend before that we're there for 2 days. But for the divisional times, I think you have a mix of the two, Matty, where like you don't want to get your guys injured, but at the same time you need to make sure you have enough time on the field. And a lot of fields, they're splitting 6-team rotations, so it's like, when do we even find time to get on the field? But you're absolutely right. You need to keep your body and your team healthy. But a lot of that comes from off the field stuff. I've done so many clinics, and I've done event practices and all this stuff where durability is a huge factor in these premier and divisional team on these divisional teams, because they're just not taking care of themselves leading up to the event. And like you mentioned it, I'm pretty active. I eat well. I drink a lot of water, and I take care of myself. The thing that polices Dynasty and myself on the field is I want to be able to be physically fit enough to play every single point. And if I can't, someone else is going to start eating up my playtime. So your motivation should be, I want to play every single point. Now, granted, Kevin had always taken the stance that he didn't want anybody to get, he's like, oh, I got 10 old guys that get hurt all the time or could get hurt anytime. You're right. Anybody can get hurt. The older you are, I think the more susceptible you could be to becoming injured. But you got to know your limits is a big factor. Okay. When you should or shouldn't be like sending it into the snake at 110% on a hot July non-layout practice. Right. That's why I don't play these woods ball, these 10-man events. I love 10-man, but I just can't turn it off. I'm gonna get hurt. But for the divisional teams, man, you just gotta be out there as often as you possibly can with whatever paint that you can manage to gather up, and be doing the types of drills that you see guys like Harrison and Kyle Berry doing on their Instagram all the time. You need to be shooting those pie tins and those plates, because those are the perishable skills.
I definitely agree. I mean, and it doesn't really take that much paint to do those drills. When your snapshot is dialed and you pull that you pull it up and it's there, your shot's on no matter what. It's a huge boost of confidence. I would also tell these divisional teams. I do this a lot with the divisional teams that I coach, because where do you typically get hurt? You're typically getting hurt in a transition to a bunker where you're diving or trying to make a spot off the break. Somebody opens up on you trying to get out to that corner. You're kind of getting a little funky trying to dodge that stream, and then something happens there, or you dislocate your shoulder diving in this snake. So I do a lot of drills where we start in your bunker, because that's where I need you to learn what move you're supposed to be making in this situation, given the time, given the body count, and whatever, and then paint levels too. And you don't even need that much paint, because sometimes at the end of the drill session, guys will be like, oh, I only got a pod and a half, or I got a hopper and a pod. I'm like, all right, get your asses in the bunker, and we're going to do a minute and a half. And this is your objective. This team needs to get here in a minute and a half, because you're just kind of breaking those skills down. So, if you are in a divisional team, I think you should be doing these drills anyway, because then you are creating learning moments as often as possible. But when you kind of stay away from those big off the break moves, like, you still have to do that stuff, because you have to be, understanding and having that knowledge of reproducing a time and time again, seeing those incoming strains so you can read those the streams so you can get out of the way of them. But I just think if you are a divisional team out there and you're listening, you got some elder statesmen on your squad, just do a lot of drills where you start in your bunker, man. Set up situationals and do it that way, because that way guys aren't blowing their shoulders out or pulling hammies like trying to make corners. What do you think?
Yeah, and actually that's a really good point. Anytime, and we've done this a couple times, because like we realized last year that some of our practices just were kind of like just lacking a little bit of direction. But you're absolutely right. So the biggest thing is, and what you mentioned, is you eliminate the variables. What are we trying to do? We're trying to do a 3-on-5 attack and defend drill or something like that in a timed drill. Well, you're right. We don't need to break out, because we want to eliminate these variables. We want to let these 3 guys have an opportunity to play these 5 guys, not shoot 2 dudes off the break and now it's a 3-on-3. Like, what was the point of us doing a 5-on-3? So you set a goal, an objective, and then you weed out all the BS, all that bullshit that you have. Get rid of that, and then focus on what the objective is, and make sure everybody knows, right? Everybody needs to understand the objective and the goal, right? Because otherwise you're like, oh, let's do this 3-on-5. And then the guys run out there and they break out, and someone gets shot, and you're like, okay, well, now we're not doing this anymore. And then the 3 guys, someone didn't tell the kid over there that it's, you're on defense, you're up a point, and he runs down the field, he gets shot, and then there's no discussion afterwards, right? So absolutely, it needs to be a goal-oriented scenario, and you want to eliminate those variables, because that's what you said. And even to your point, that way it just kind of also eliminates we're going to start in the snake, so that way you don't have to sprint into the snake and possibly hurt yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's where that happens. And again, it's just, there's just, to me, when I'm talking to, and I'm going to continue to say this. People are like, oh, Matty, you said this before. I don't care. I'm going to continue to preach this gospel until the next time I have a series of 10 phone calls or talk to a bunch of divisional dudes when we're at a tournament. I don't hear one time that they're not running drills. Oh yeah, dude, we just show up and play points. I'm like, okay. And your goal is to be like a winning pro team one day? I'm like, they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, that could take you 15 years. It's like, you're not just putting yourself in learning moments and trying to figure out like how to understand the complexity and the chess match situation, the strategy of this game. You're just like hoping the learning moments happen. And then you get the right criticism after you run a point. I mean, playing points is way more fun, but if you're actually trying to get better, you better be running some drills out there, especially on any team that I coach. But we got about 10 minutes left here, Ryan. So I just wanted to kind of throw a couple teams at you and get your thoughts. What do you think about Aftermath?
I like their pickups. Greeny was an interesting from the Lucky 15s. That was a good pickup. That was an interesting one. It's funny. Someone messaged me kind of after we had made the decision. Like, I'm talking, we were gonna tell Joe like in the next hour, we're gonna call him and tell him like, hey, we decided like we want you on the team. And someone reached out and was like, hey, what about Greeny from Lucky 15s? And I just didn't have the bandwidth at that point to kind of like put everything on hold and then reignite this conversation that I've been having. I was so tired with all that. But I think that's a really good pickup. I think what Aftermath, is doing right now with their program is really good. I just hope that they can understand the what we just talked about. I think that's the biggest thing holding them back, is that not the focus, because they're out there, they're playing, and then they're getting as much paint and resources as they need. They just need to understand that objective and goal oriented situation a little bit better.
Yeah, I'd also like to pick up a Julian too.
Yeah,
I think Julian's Julian's pretty good. Greeny's good. They still have, I mean, obviously, but again, talking about different areas for Aftermath, they are losing half their dudes. And the team that we saw for the past season is no longer. They lost half their guys, and that's a team that likes to run two lines. Yeah, so rebuild. What do you think about the Ironman? A team you've been playing against now for 26 years?
27,
like
26, 27, yeah.
27? Yeah, a lot.
I like that pickup. I like the pickups. I like what they did. I think that's going to be helpful for them. Who they got? They got Frank. They got did they keep O'Mara, or O'Mara's
Pack.
Did he leave?
No, O'Mara's out. Geiger's
PK.
out. They got Pat Kraft, Garrett Baldwin, Jerry Caro.
I'm sorry, but they got Jerry Caro. That's right. No, they're good. They're going to be good. I think they're going to play really well. I think that's a really good pickup. PK was good. Frank's good. I think they're going to do well. And obviously Jerry Caro is really good. He's a good offensive player. He was high up on our list as well.
Yeah, Jerry is an offensive phenom. He's a NorCal guy. Just needs to be on a team with some stability, and hopefully he can make all the events. That's kind of one of the big things with him. What do you think about Infamous?
Infamous is always this wild card to me. I always feel like they should be better than they are finishing. Who all did they pick up? They got Trevor. They got
Rob Velez and Geiger.
Who else didn't? And Velez, yeah. Oh, and then they got Geiger. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not. I was blinded by all of our the anarchy going on our team to follow every other team. I think they're gonna do well, man. I think Rob is solid. Trevor's back, with those guys. I think they're gonna be good. I'm always like, whenever we draw them, obviously they beat us in the last time we drew them, but I'm like, dude, these guys are good. Like, and I feel like they just haven't made it past that next step for some weird reason. Like, I can't explain it.
Yeah, there was a team I talked about this a couple days ago on Play the Game, but I in the beginning of the year last season 2024, I kind of picked them to do better than they did, and just because the team is full of threats and vets. They got a lot of threats. They got a lot of vets. They got really good attackers, and they got good leadership, and they got support, and they're hungry for it. It's been a while since they've won. Team's been around forever. So I just thought they'd do a little bit better this year than they did, but just had poor execution in some, those tough moments on Sunday. I don't know how long they're going to have patient this season, but Jonah Jamrose is starting to come into his own, and he's now not a veteran yet, but he's been around for a couple seasons. But Trevor Reeser and Rob Velez, Rob Velez did not get a ton of playing time on Impact, but he had some big moments for him in some points. And then Trevor Reeser's a beast.
He's good.
Geiger's an offensive weapon. Yeah. So they basically are, Geiger can slot in for Patient whenever Patient can't be there anymore. And Reeser can slot in for Barrett. Velez could too. And Sam Silberg's getting really good. He didn't have the best showing at Cup because he had COVID before that, couldn't practice with the team. But I love Sam Silberg, man. He's really fun to watch. I think he's got all the skills. He's intelligent. He's aggressive. Little fast dude, good gunfighter. I mean, he's got a lot of the things that you need to be elite at this game. And I think that it would not surprise me at all if he could help lead the charge continuing on that D side for them into 2025. So I still really like the team. And then again, they got, great leadership with Travis Lemansky. Callie Rudolph's been there forever too. I mean, the team is, I just think they're going to continue to be there on Sundays and flirt with it. But it's up to them. It's this year they really need to execute a little bit more on Sunday. That's obviously the most difficult thing. Talk about executing on Sunday or not. the last team I think we'll talk about here before I let you go. Well, we'll do two more real quick. AC Diesel, obviously your co-host on the Spick and Span show, Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you guys check it out. Super fun show. I love coming down on your coming to your show because it's just always a good time, dude. Community's good. It's a little lighter than some of the other shows. I don't have to host it, so I get asked questions instead of having to ask the questions, which is great. But yeah, super fun. But Kyle Spick is your co-host, so you probably know more about AC Diesel than most people. What do you think? I mean, they lose Mouse, pick up Jared Lackey, but that's about it. I've heard some rumblings that maybe this guy or that guy, but nothing's happened, as far as new pickups have been concerned. I know they've been in talks with dudes, but nothing got pulled. No trigger was pulled on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're in a good place because now I think they've shaken off the jitters of can we win. The doubt may have been shaken off a bit. And again, I think that every person who's watching this or can all agree like what was going on with that team for so long. I think that they are lacking a quarterback on the field. They need a guy who is a solid number 2. That or 2 or 3 position guy. They definitely don't need any more offensive dudes. But they need a guy who's confident enough to lead the team. And that's, I think, their big one. And because they fell apart like a cheap watch in that PB Fit match, but they were asking for it the entire time. Like the style of play that they have is I don't know. It's an interesting way that some of the guys handle and conduct themselves on the field. And I think that's been the biggest drawback to them is not having an on the field quarterback. Like a guy, I mean, if like Marcelo went over to that team, like it would be instantly a successful team because there would be somebody there being like, knock it off, or this is what we need to do. Or like, let's position the bodies in this direction. Or me, like they just need a guy like that who can be on the team and create and help foster a winning attitude.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you bring that up because if you look at their performance at Cup, which was incredibly impressive until they fell apart in that PB Fit match. And I haven't done a wellness check on Clint Johnson, but I definitely need to touch base with Clint and maybe get him on the show. He can defend himself for what went down. He swears that referee pushed him first, but we do have a replay on that. But Diesel was really good at World Cup. Yeah. And they beat Dynamite by 4, they mercy ruled Shock, beat the Hurricanes by 3, beat the Bears by 2, beat Infamous in the Ocho finals by 3, beat Scout by 1, and then just had probably the biggest what's the self-immolation when you light yourself on fire.
They were showing themselves off the whole time. Someone's like, "Is that fake?
Gasoline?"
Like, nah, look at this legit. And then it just
gasoline
fell apart.
Oh man, I feel bad for him though. It was tough. Yeah, and also they just got once Clint pushed that ref, no benefit of the doubt. It was just flag. That game was over. I was taking notes of that game, and as I was kind of rewatching it, I was like, "Cause that's what it felt like." When it was just there, just every little nick here, little this, and it was rough. Anyway. But to kind of speak on that part that you were discussing just a second ago about how having that quarterback is that Mouse was kind of that guy on the snake side for them because they were going more with BJ and the snake. It was cool to see Mouse, and he'd been trying to do that for a while, doing it with a little bit of success previously when they would make a Sunday here or there. But they were just having a lot of grinding of gears on their attackers for the most part. Or in the backfield, whatever. There's multiple different situations on it, but they had BJ was playing really well in the snake, and Clint was playing really well as a first attacker too, and then Mouse was playing well behind him. The D side was looking good. Silos. It was just they were getting contributions from everyone, and they were starting to get that momentum. So now with just losing Mouse, but I'm wondering how much that's going to affect them, right? Because they lose that quarterback who was playing that 2 position essentially, who then can take over and be the big attacker because Mouse is a legend, going to be a Hall of Famer, all-star. Right. There's a reason why he gets paid as much as he does the past 10 years or so. But who steps into that role? I feel like that's kind of the big question for Diesel heading into 2025, right? Like still like very stable on the roster because Lackey's not really that guy. Lackey's the first attacker in the snake. So Lackey's not going to step back and play that 2 role. I mean, who knows? Maybe he will. but somebody has to play that role. And then there's Kyle Spick and Mark Johnson, but Kyle's been, playing a bit, but coaching a little bit more. And then you have Mark, who also plays that role too, but Mark's has to coach now. So, that's a kind of a couple options you could slide into that position. But that's something that,
it should be Kyle.
Figure out. So I was going to say Kyle when you were saying that. I'm like, there's a guy for that.
It should without a doubt be Kyle. I don't think he would be the quarterback kind of guy on the overall part of the team, but I think he should for sure fill in as that like stud number 2 in the scramble, getting things done player. Without a doubt is that he could be that. I think they just need one more person or body that can do that.
Well, Kyle has gotten really good at the strategy, and he's been coaching divisional teams, and he's been loving it. And then he's been also helping coach a bit too with AC Diesel. And so when you have a guy that has that ability, he could kind of sneak into that role, play that role where you're seeing how things are developing on the field, and then can, if you lose your first attacker, you can go in there because that's how he cut his teeth and became paintball famous. So but it's just, I hope he sees that. I don't know, it's something I probably should talk to Kyle about, and we could bring him on and discuss it. Last team before we sign off here, Chicago Aftershock. A little bit of change there. The question, we didn't know if they were going to have, with A-Rod potentially having to do a little bit more commitment to his music career. Didn't know if he was going to retire, how much he could be there. Apparently he is going to be there quite a bit next year. And then, then they lose Nick Slowiak and Al Fernandez, 2 veterans, but then they pick up 3 bodies from the Bears and Connor Kelly. So they get a big, young up-and-coming all-star in Connor Kelly. The Altamores are good on the attack. They got Krishoni as well, too. So they definitely got a lot of depth this year. They got a lot of guys to pick from. What do you think?
Yeah, that's an understatement as far as the offense goes. They've been a big, run squad 1 until they can't, perform, and then start putting in the line 2 bodies in. And it just hasn't been incredibly successful because they would go on a run and then the guys would get tired, and then so durability was a little bit of a factor with them that I saw them struggle with a little bit. But I mean, they added 4 offensive dudes that like is all gas, no brakes, to a certain extent. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, it definitely if they had lost A-Rod for the season, then they definitely would have had to absolutely pick somebody up to fill his position. But him staying on definitely will help them quite a bit. And obviously they got Corey as well. I think they're still going to have a really, really good team. What was the verdict with Thomas Kim?
Thomas Kim, from what I've been hearing, and I haven't heard this from Thomas, but I heard this from Todd, is that he will be there. I think there might be one event he might not be able to make, but it's still a little. There's also one event that A-Rod might not be able to make, so that was kind of one of the reasons they went to pick up that depth. Obviously, Thomas Kim and A-Rod are going to start when they're there because those dudes are killers, and they're obviously a big component of the decent amount of success that, Aftershock didn't win an event in 2024, but they made the finals and they were a threat. And I feel like that's a pretty competent first season putting that team together. So I think that Thomas Kim's going to be there for the bulk of the events, and maybe all of them. So, because he's starting out his pilot career. So who knows? Maybe he'll get an opportunity midway through the year. Not exactly sure. Yeah, I think they're going to be fine too. But still, I really like Connor Kelly on that team. And then, is Clay Hughes going to step up? Can Hosky get better? He was already pretty good last year in his rookie year.
A lot of
I don't know. That's
a lot of offense.
Yeah. A lot of offense. Especially, because they, again, losing. So, Nick plays, so they lose Nick Slowiak, and then pick up Nick from the Bears. So Nick can play a little bit farther back, but they lose Al. So, they have and then if for whatever reason, Thomas, and let's just say disaster strikes, Nick Krishoni gets hurt, and then both A-Rod and Thomas Kim can't make the same event midway through the season. Yeah. It's literally going to be 5 1s and 2s out there,
like the Russians
playing every single point. It'll be like the Russians for sure. Yeah,
it's just like the Russians.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. You teach any clinics coming up? Anything you want people to know about other than Spick and Span show? Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Pacific time.
Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Nothing on the books aside from local stuff as far as clinics go. I did take a position with Core, so I'll be representing as a brand ambassador JT and all the brands underneath Core, as well as kind of helping with the media side of things and getting the brands, polished up and in front of everybody, making sure that we back in the day, Matty, like JT's such an iconic brand. We did all those photo shoots with Luis back in the day. We're going to kind of recreate some of that type of feel, the nostalgic feel that's really, really synonymous with the JT brand. So I'm going to, be helping with that. We got the Imperial program for divisional teams out there going on right now. So if any divisional teams want to sign up, get sponsored by JT or Empire, you guys can get that done at paintballsponsorship.com.
Awesome. Ryan, love you, bud. You are definitely a blessing to this game we call paintball. I hope you can play for 10 more years, and then you can just coach and own the team after that. But we still got a little bit left in you, brother. So I will I'll see you soon. And everyone, thank you guys. Yeah, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, we're going to be stacking up with a decent amount of shows as we head into this first event. As like I said, man, things have gotten crazy here in the off season. So there is quite a bit to talk about before we get to event number 1. And I'll see you guys soon.